Well, hello everyone. For those of you who don't know, my name's Warren, and I'm here from the Warren's Team Talk. It's my YouTube channel, and thank you very much for coming by and having a look at my channel. Now, so what I've got today is I've got a brand new spanking series for you. So we finished the England's most successful football club. I've done my previews of the Euros, and now I'm doing a new thing. Now this one, it will be done sporadically throughout the life of the YouTube channel, and it's going to be called Memories of the Football Terrace, the Memories of the Football Terrace podcast. And in this episode, it's going to be all about me. Not because I'm an egomaniac or because all I care about is me. It's because I want it to be the first one so that people can see what the sort of things that I'm going to be talking about in this thing. So, but today I thought for the first episode, I'm going to talk to you all about how I first got interested in football and how it all kicked off. So anyway, I hope you enjoy that and you enjoy me talking about what happened and what have you and all the exciting things that happened. And then in another episode, I'm going to talk to you about my life as being an Arsenal supporter and how that all happened and so on and so forth. And then in another episode, I'm going to talk to you about all the other grounds I visited, all the adventures I had, all the different other football matches I went to see, how I ended up being a Celtic supporter, how I ended up being also an Athletic fan, and how I ended up following Maidstone United around for a while, things like that. So hopefully those things will be interesting for you, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, anyway, I hope that you're all well anyway, and that you're looking after each other and that you're having a great time and that you're enjoying the Euros. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. But before we do, please make sure you hit that like button. It's really important to help me grow the channel, and also make sure that you subscribe to the channel. That's really important as well. And also share it about. You know, don't keep hold of it. Don't keep it a secret. If there's anyone you think that might be interested in watching this as well, please make sure you pass the video on to them as well. So anyway, that's enough of me just rambling on like a demented idiot. So without further ado, let's get on and get started. So here we are. I'm going to start talking to you about how I got interested in football to start with, and how that all started for me, and yeah, we'll take it from there and see what happens really. So when did my interest in football start? Well, I don't know, it's very difficult to say, because from as young an age as I can remember, I've always been really interested in football. I mean, as a youngster, I can remember watching it on the TV and like impersonating the players that I saw on the TV, like on the big match and Match the Day and stuff. Obviously, when I was really young, I didn't get to watch Match the Day when I was like 4 or 5 years old, but I remember doing impersonations of some of the players on the big match and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it started like almost, I think, probably from the time that I could walk. And I remember I had a football thing on a bar of soap, when it was on a string and it was in the shape of a football. And I remember one year there was snow on the ground, and I was playing football with it out in in the snow. Don't ask me why, but apparently I was. And it got lost, and I got really, really upset and whatnot. But yeah, and we couldn't find it. So there you go. So yeah, like I say, it started from a really young age and whatever. So the next thing is, how did I get started in supporting the team? Well, I remember one day I was in my bedroom and I had this chart, like football ladder thing, and you used to be able to, you had these like little stickers and you'd be able to move the teams up the ladders, and there's like 4 divisions, and you had a little sticker for each team, and it would go up and down each week depending on the results. And I was updating my ladders, and I remember my dad came in to see me, and I remember him having a conversation with me and saying, look, if you want to go, would you like to go and watch a football team? Like, but he said, if you want to pick a football team, I'll make sure that I'll take you to the games, but make sure it's a local team or a London-based team so that we can get to the games. So I sat there. I don't know why. I just said, yeah, I want to go and watch Arsenal. So that's how it all started, really. So my dad took me to see Arsenal, and so my first game was on the 16th of September 1972 at Highbury. It was a game between Arsenal and Liverpool, and the game was famous because of the fact that the linesman or linesperson, whatever you want to call them, or the referee's assistant, I think they're called these days, ended up getting injured. And an announcement was put out to say, is there a qualified referee in the crowd? If there is, can they make themselves known, so that we can continue the game? So because there is, I didn't know this, but apparently there's a UEFA FIFA regulation or FA regulation, which states if you haven't got sufficient match officials, then the game can't be played. So Jimmy Hill, who was a famous TV pundit back in the day, some of you might remember him, who are old enough. Yeah, he was a qualified referee. He came down and he offered to, and he put himself forward to run the line, and that's him there on the far right of the screen with the flag in his hand. He was running the line that day. And then in the middle picture, you can see the front cover of the match day program. And then on the far left, you can see a picture of the clocking, which was where my dad and I stood that day. And I've put a little circle around, sort of showing where roughly I think we were standing that day on the clock end to see the game. So yeah, and I remember, I don't think there was any real segregation in the crowd either, because I can remember Liverpool fans being there and chatting with us and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a great day, and I'll never ever forget it. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it. Then, so following on from that, how did I sort of watch football? You know, carrying on, because I never went every game after that. Like it was a few years before me and my dad started going regularly. I think he just wanted to see how I got on with it, and then maybe he thought I was a bit too young to be going on a regular basis. But anyway, so moving on, like you used to watch Grandstand and World of Sport, and the used to look out for the scores because they used to like flash them up on the screen when other sports were being played, like the rugby league, or because on a Saturday afternoon on BBC One and ITV, they used to have an afternoon sports program that started just after lunchtime, and it would continue on till the end of end of early evening, say about 5:30. And what would happen? They'd have all these sports on. They'd have horse racing, and they'd have Football Focus, which was a Saturday lunchtime program that would talk about issues to do with football. It was a good show. It was a good show. And then after that, they would show live rugby league matches and wrestling and all sorts of different sports, and like I say, horse racing, stuff like that. And as these things were going on, all these like televised sports were going on, if there was a goal in the game, it would like flash up on the screen. And yeah, periodically, like when in between these things happening, they'd go back to the studio, and the anchor person, which would be Frank Boff or Dickie Davis, would sit there and say, right, yep, let's go to Anfield. There's been a goal at Anfield, or let's bring you the updates of the scores. And someone like a reporter would, there'd either be a reporter who would phone in with an update of a score, or the anchor person would say, yeah, Malcolm McDonald scored at Highbury, Arsenal winning 1-0. He scored in the 28th minute after a corner on the right-hand side by George Armstrong, and the ball floated in and he headed it home, something like that. Then there was also then on the Saturday night, there would be Match of the Day. And as I got a little bit older, my parents would let me stay up to watch Match of the Day on the Saturday night, and I'd be allowed to watch the matches. And then once the matches had finished and the guys in the studio were just talking about the games, then I would be sent off to bed. So yeah, that was really good. And then on the Sunday there was the big match. So here we go. There's a picture of Frank Boff and Dickie Davis on Grandstand and World of Sport. And these two guys were they were the anchor men for those two shows that used to go off on the Saturday afternoon on TV. Grandstand was the BBC show, and World of Sport was the ITV one. Now, and here we go. You know, there's Match of the Day. Jimmy Hill, the guy who ran the line in the Arsenal-Liverpool game that we talked about earlier, he was like the anchor man for the Match of the Day show, same way that Gary Lineker is these days. And then the guy next to him is John Motson. Now, that guy is incredible. He has got an encyclopedic knowledge of football, and he was an incredible football commentator. So yeah, and like I said, my parents would let me stay up and watch Match of the Day, and you'd hear commentary from John Motson, and it was great. I absolutely loved it. And then in those days, there was no like live football as such on TV. The only live football on TV at that time was the FA Cup final. So that the only game of the season that would come on live was that one. And then also I think the England-Scotland game was on live, because at the end of each season at that time, we had this tournament called the British Home International Championship, where England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland would play in a tournament over a couple of weeks. So each team would play each other once, It's a bit like the Six Nations these days in rugby union, but for football. It was great. It was great. And those games, some of those games were screened live on TV as well. Then, but during the week there was like late evening, say about 10, 10:30, 11 or something. If there was football played during the week, important matches, you get to see highlights on these two TV shows. One was called Midweek Sports Special. I think that one was on the BBC, and then there was Sports Night on ITV. The Sports Night one was presented by David Coleman. Now, David Coleman, he was another sports commentator, but he was known for his one-liners or like ridiculous, outlandish comments on mistakes that he used to make. So yeah, you'd be able to see highlights of games that have been played. Now, sometimes, like I say, when I got a bit older, I'd be allowed to stay up and watch those if it was like really important games. And what would happen? What would happen is like on the news, there'd be like a national news program on like the 9 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news that would come on. And before this program would start, they'd say, yes, here are the results of tonight's football matches. So if you don't want to see the results, look away now. And you'd have to look away. They wouldn't read out the results. They would just put them on the screen because they knew people would be watching these highlights programs afterwards. Now, I remember one game, I think it was during the year that Arsenal had their marathon FA Cup struggle with Sheffield Wednesday in the third round. I think the game went to about 4 replays before we finally got a victor. And I remember we were sitting there, me and my dad, we were watching the highlights of this cup replay. We didn't know the score. And my mum sits there and she said to us, oh, I don't know why you two are watching this. You ain't going to see any goals. I just couldn't believe it. So me and my dad, we just looked at her and said, oh, thank you very much. Completely ruined it for us. It reminds me of that show, The Likely Lads, when they were watching that. They wanted to watch, England were playing abroad somewhere and they were trying to avoid the result, but everywhere they went, they were like nearly getting to see the result. And it was a really funny episode, but anyway. Yeah, so there was that. And then also there was radio commentary that would appear. And I used to listen to a lot of radio commentary as well during the week. Because particularly if there were big games on the radio, like for example, Arsenal's games in cup matches or away games in Europe. There was even a show on one radio station called Gunners in Europe. And I remember listening, there was one season, I think it was 78, 79 season. Yeah, it was 78, 79 season when Arsenal played Hajduk Split from the former Yugoslavia, which is now in Croatia, and Red Star Belgrade, which is now in Serbia. They played them in a UEFA Cup run, and they had commentary on those games. And then also I remember listening to the Titanic FA Cup matches with Sheffield Wednesday. And then there was also a League Cup semi-final, two-legged affair with Liverpool, and the first leg Arsenal lost 2-1 at Anfield, so the tie was in the balance somewhat. The game come back to Highbury for the second leg, and I turned on the game. The first half there was no commentary for the first half, but they covered the second half live. And then Peter Jones, that guy on the right-hand side there, in my opinion, the greatest football commentator who ever lived. No one, in my opinion, could bring a game to life through his commentary like he did. He was absolutely superb. Even better than, and this is saying something, than Terry on the Claude and the Bantsters channel. So there you go. And Terry's good, let me tell you. But anyway, so what he did that night, it was incredible. Before they started commentating on the second half, he said, well, we had some excitement in the first half, and this is what happened in the 25th minute. And then he started commentating on this passage of play where Arsenal had missed a golden opportunity to take the lead in the game. Yeah, so that was amazing. And what would happen when I started going regularly to Arsenal for the Saturday matches, if they had a home game in the evening, sometimes my dad would go, but I wouldn't be able to go because obviously I had school the next day, which was fair enough. But what I would do, I'd lay in bed listening to the match on the radio. And yeah, so on one occasion, I remember Arsenal were playing Swindon away in a League Cup tie, and Arsenal went behind by 3-1, and then partway through the second half, Liam Brady took back the game by the scruff of the neck and dragged Arsenal back into the game, and it was 3-3. And then suddenly, and then in extra time, Arsenal unfortunately lost the game 4-3. But I remember my dad, oh my God, he got so stressed by this game of football, he ended up smoking about 40 cigarettes throughout the course of the match. So, yeah. So going back to my experiences of watching live football, I started going probably regularly, probably about 1976, 77, something like that. But in the next episode, I'm going to talk to you all about my experiences of going watching the Arsenal and what that was like for me. One of the earliest games I remember, other than that Liverpool game that I mentioned earlier, was when Arsenal played Ipswich Town at home. Jimmy Rimmer was in goal that day, and me and my dad, we were on the North Bank, but we were like to the right of that covered area that you can see there. So it was to the right as you look at it. So it was like in this like corner part, and Arsenal lost the game by 4-1. Oh my God. And I remember in the game, this Ipswich player, he lobbed Jimmy Rimmer from, I think, just outside the penalty area. Yeah, so it was an absolute thumping. And I remember saying to my dad after the game, how much longer is Arsenal going to allow this to go on? Because Arsenal were like sliding down the table. And I remember him saying to me, don't worry, he said, if it gets really bad, they'll do something. So, yeah, so what was it like? The next question, I guess, is how did we get tickets for the games? Because some of the games were like, it was quite difficult to get tickets. I remember what Arsenal used to do. They used to have a ballot for home matches. You'd have to write in, say you wanted tickets and how many you wanted and stuff, and then they'd write back and let you know if you've been successful or not. But you could also just turn up and pay to get in. And I think I remember the earliest I can remember. I can remember it was like, I think it was £1.20 or something to get in at the North Bank, and the program was about 50p. So what was so I guess the next thing I want to talk to you about is like the match day ritual. So my dad and I would get going. Sometimes we'd take a flask of soup and some sandwiches with us, and we'd be sat in the West Stand or the East Stand and have our lunch. We'd get in there quite early and soak up the atmosphere and stuff like that. Or we would go, and there was this, like, it wasn't the Gunner's Chip Bar, but there was another little hut place like further down the road. And I don't know, I can't remember what my dad had, but I always used to enjoy having the Savoy and chips from this place. So yeah, that was good. And then, you know, we'd go and get a program, because in those days as well, every home game they'd print a little token inside the program, and you used to have to collect these tokens so that if Arsenal got to an FA Cup final, you'd have to stick all these little tokens onto this chart, and then you go and present this chart at the ground, and they give you a cup final ticket, which was what happened in 1980. We collected all the tokens and we got to get a cup final ticket for the 1980 FA Cup final. So what about, I guess, football games? Well, there was a few that I used to like playing. There was a board game called Wembley. I don't know if any of you knew that. It's a bit like Monopoly, but with a twist, because you would be able to buy football teams, and then, you know, you'd play FA Cup matches with these dice, and then you get money for winning an FA Cup title. It was a bit complicated, but it was great. Then obviously Subbuteo. I don't know if any of you ever played that. I used to love playing it. I used to have leagues, I used to have cup matches, I'd have World Cup matches. I used to paint the players different colours and things like that. And in the bottom picture there, you can see it, and you used to have to flick the players to get them to move and to kick the ball. It was brilliant. I really used to love it. And you see that white line between the centre circle and the penalty area? You were only allowed to shoot once you got into that area of the pitch. So you wouldn't be allowed to shoot from like the halfway line or anything like that. Then there was another thing. I absolutely loved it. Now, I remember about a week or so ago, I sent out a few of you some old papers that I had from this game. It's called Legacta, and it's called Chart Soccer, but it was like a dice-based game, and you used to have dice, and depending on the difference in points or the difference in ratings between the teams would determine what dice you would get to roll in order to calculate the outcome of a football match. And then you record the details of the match on paper. Like, so you get the FA Cup, you'd have leagues, you'd have League Cup, you have European Cup, European Cup Winners' Cup, and the UEFA Cup, World Cup, European Championships. It was fantastic. I really enjoy it, and I still play it now and again now. So there was that. Then there was later on, this one is here. There was like a computer game called Football Manager, and this is from 2001. So by then I was, how old was I? 27. I would have been in my early 30s by then, I guess, in 2001. And this is like a screenshot of Football Manager, and it's for Cristiano Ronaldo, and it basically what it did, it would calculate football matches on tactics that you put in and the players you put in and stuff. So it's like basically what it was a computer-based football management simulation game, and there were ones that were even older than this one that I used to play as well, and I used to love those as well. Anything to do with football, and I loved it basically. So there was that. There was like the Legato thing. There was other computer games where you could play like as a player and like play with teams, and like a bit like FIFA, I guess, but much earlier predecessors. So things that examples of that would have been Sensible Soccer or things like that. So yeah, they were great. Now, playing football at school, obviously I used to play football a lot at school, either in the playground or in what we would call game session, which was like physical education or stuff like that. And I remember there was a period where I decided that I wanted to play in as lower level as I possibly could, because I just enjoyed dribbling the ball around all the players and scoring goals, until the master who was running the lesson got fed up with it and made me move up to a higher level. And I remember my first game in this session, in this lesson, I was running down the wing, I was bearing down on goal, and then all of a sudden this kid who was a rugby player, he decided, no, I'm not having this, and he come running over and he rugby tackled me, stopped me scoring. So yeah, and then I played in a few school matches at school, and I remember one game. Now there was a big divide in our team, and a few of the lads just down tools. I remember there was a group of them standing in the centre circle, just chatting and not doing anything. We ended up losing the game, unsurprisingly, 6-2 at home, and there was a lot of heated words, and the master, the head school teacher who was reffing the game, had a word with the lads who were like in the centre circle, and there was some detentions involved, and yeah, it got really messy. I remember one game in a games lesson, this kid was by far and away the best player in the school. He was absolutely superb. He comes storming through the centre of the pitch, and I thought, nah, I'm not having this. So I just run over and took him out. And then me and him nearly got involved in a fight. We had to be pulled apart. Yeah, and after that, I got nicknamed Marco Tardelli for bringing him down. Then we also had a mates team. So the mates team, it was like every weekend we would play a match. And it was about when we were about 13 or 14, I suppose. And there was one mates team, which was one I was in. And then there was another one. And we would play it. And the team I was in, every week we would batter this other lot, like mercilessly. Anyway, so unbeknown to me, there was a transfer took place. So I got transferred to the other team for a packet of sweets, I believe, and a can of Coke or something like that, or a bottle of Coke. So I started playing for the other team. When I was playing for the original team before I got transferred, I used to play as a left back. And then when I went and played for this team, they asked me if I'd mind playing up front. So I went and played up front. In the first game, I scored 4 goals. I've run amok. And there was a big hoo-ha about that. And I ended up getting transferred back. The transfer got cancelled and I went back. Yeah, so, yeah, that was great fun. So we also, these two teams as well, on one occasion we played a charity match for 5 hours on this local football pitch in the middle of winter, and we absolutely murdered the pitch. Literally turned it into a mud bath. The football team went ballistic, whose pitch it belonged to. There was they were ringing up the school, complaining and kicking off. The headmaster, bless him, he defended us, and we got called into his office, and he explained to us that what we did was a bit out of order and that we shouldn't have done it, but he refused to discipline us. He just said, look, they've raised all this money for this local charity. So yeah, no, I'm not disciplining them for that. So yeah, that was that. And then I think after that, the two teams disbanded and we never ever played any games after that. Then I remember once at school, we went on an exchange trip. We had a lot of German lads come over and they stayed with the kids from my school, and we played a football match on the school pitch, and we beat the Germans 2-1. Now, every single kid in my school who played in this game turned up in the school football kit. Not me, no. Muppet. I turned up in my Arsenal kit. And the Germans, they didn't have school uniforms, obviously, for obvious reasons. And they all turned up in their football kits. The kid who was staying at my house, I'm still quite friendly with, he turned up in his Bayern Munich kit. Yeah, we beat them 2-1. And then when we went to Germany, we had a return game, and that ended in a 3-3 draw. So yeah, that was great. Really, really enjoyable. Now, what about football at work? Now, when I went to work, I went and worked for NatWest Bank, and it turned out that one of the managers who worked there, he was an ex-Arsenal player. Now, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he was playing at the club during the 30s. I don't know whether he ever actually made it into the first team, but he was there under Herbert Chapman's reign. And I remember him saying to me when he found out I was an Arsenal supporter, he said to me, listen, Warren, there is no other club in England like Arsenal. He said, it's just something magical about the place. He said, I don't know if it's the marble halls or what it is, he said, but go to another club and it's just not the same. And I remember that there was me and another guy that worked with me. He was a Spurs fan. And me, him, and my mate Mick, you probably heard me talk about him before. He was a big Norwich fan, he still is. We decided we were going to go to the 1988 European Championships in Germany. And that tournament was quite famous because of all the hooliganism that took place, and there was a lot of concerns before the tournament about the English hooligan element. And I remember that the manager, the guy who was the ex-Arsenal player, he called us into his office before the game, and he said to us, look, before we went, and he said, look, lads, I've been told I've got to speak to you, and I've got to remind you that when you're there, we expect you to be on your best behaviour. Don't do anything that's going to damage the reputation of the bank, because if you do, your jobs could be on the line. And we said, oh, okay, yeah, no, we understand, that's fine. He said, but when you're out there, make sure you get me one of those German helmets, because when I was there during the war, I wasn't able to get one. So he wanted us to bring him back a German helmet. So, yeah, there you go. We often played games against other banks, and there was this one game where the manager of the bank that I worked in, or the branch that I worked in, I should say, had a really fierce rivalry with the manager of the branch that we were going to play against, and even offered us money to make sure that we won the game. They couldn't stand each other apparently, so he wanted to make sure that we beat them. Then I remember going back to when I was still at school, and nearing the time where I was about to leave, I got a job in Waitrose on a Thursday and Friday night, and sometimes on a Saturday. And when I was working on a Saturday, the manager at Waitrose would often come and find me and send me down to see my mates who worked in B-Jams, which was a bit like Iceland at the time, and asked me to go and get the football scores, see how Arsenal were getting on, because he was a big Arsenal fan as well. But what he didn't know was I'd go down there, I'd be sitting there having a chat and a laugh with the lads at B-Jams, and then sometimes a big fight would break out, or there would be a disagreement about the football, and we'd all start fighting or stuff like that. So not too serious, it was just a bit of a laugh, really. And then again, when I was at NatWest, I used to run a prediction game for the football, and I would send out the fixtures for the games that were going to happen on the Saturday, on a Thursday, Friday at the latest, and people would write down what they thought the scores of the games would be. Everyone who wanted to enter would put £1 in, and then on the Monday we'd top up the scores and see who the winner had been, and they would get all the money. And then I used to do something similar for every Euros and World Cup as well. So that was great fun, that really was. So when then sadly in 1983, when my dad died, then obviously that was a horrific experience for me and left me really, really upset. I wasn't able to go to football for a while because my mum didn't want me going on my own. And then what happened, one of my neighbours they were big Middlesbrough fans, so he used to allow me to tag along with them, and I used to go and watch a few Middlesbrough games, and a couple of times we were lucky enough because they were going to play Arsenal, and I remember standing at the back of the Holgate end at Ayresome Park watching Arsenal play in the FA Cup. We lost the game 3-2. Charlie Nicholas scored an absolute screamer of a goal at Ayresome Park. Yeah, but we lost the game 3-2. But I'm going to talk to you more about my experiences watching Arsenal in another video, and my experiences of going to other grounds and what grounds I went to and what happened, and another one. So yeah, so who were my favourite players like when I was growing up watching Arsenal? So my favourite players, Cheeky Charlie Nicholas, Georgie Armstrong, and David Rocky Rowcastle. Charlie, because when he first came, he came with a really big reputation from one of my other clubs, Celtic. He scored a lot of goals up in Scotland, and I could see why he scored a lot of goals, because he was always in and around the penalty area, like trying to sniff out chances. He had incredible technique. But the problem was when he was at Arsenal, he didn't replicate to the same level the success he'd had at Celtic, because he was a little guy. He was about 5'10", 5'11" or something, and the Arsenal manager at the time, I think it was Terry Neal, Don Howe, and then latterly George Graham, would like pump high balls up in the air for him, but he needed the ball on the ground. He was very technically gifted. So yeah, it didn't really work out. It worked out for him at Arsenal. I mean, I'm not saying he was a failure, not by any stretch of the imagination, because he wasn't. But I think he would have been, if they played to his strengths, he would have scored far more goals. That's what I'm saying. George Armstrong was a fantastic player. Up and down the wing all the time, tirelessly working. Great player. I used to absolutely love that. I absolutely loved him. And then Rocky Roca. I mean, any Arsenal fan will tell you about Rocky. He's hard as nails, extremely technically gifted. I remember watching the Rocky and Righty documentary and hearing David Dean saying that he found this player in South London. It could be Brazilian, and he was right. He could have. He was superb. Worked so hard. And George Graham brought him into the team, and he should have had far more England caps than he did, but unfortunately his career got dogged by injuries. So yeah, God bless him. Another player I used to love was Brian Talbot. Signed him from Ipswich Town. Great player, in my opinion. Tireless worker in the midfield. Another one that never stopped running all day. I really like energetic players, and he was certainly one of those. He went through this period as well where he was deadly from free kicks. He scored 2 successive weeks. He scored a free kick against Newcastle, and then I think he scored one against Liverpool as well. He was superb, and he never ever stopped running. So much so that in the 1979 FA Cup final, he collapsed on the coach after the game, and he had to be given oxygen because he just ran himself into the ground. What a player, a real hero. Another player, the one in the middle, Liam Brady, one of the greatest players ever to grace Arsenal Football Club. His left foot was unbelievable. He was absolutely superb. I just idolised the lad. He was super. I loved him. Absolutely loved him. And then Alan Ball. I remember Alan Ball vaguely because it was a long, long time ago. But I remember being really upset the day that he left Arsenal. And also remember being really upset the day that Liam Brady left as well. And I remember him coming to the North Bank to wave goodbye to us. And it was really, really sad. So what about my greatest ever Arsenal 11? So my greatest ever Arsenal 11, I'd say David Seaman in goal. Centre-back pairing of David O'Leary and Tony Adams. Left-back Kenny Sansom. Right-back Pat Rice. Centre midfield, I'd have Patrick Vieira and Gilberto. And then on the right-hand side of midfield, I'd have David Rocastle. And then left side, I'd have Liam Brady. And then up front, I'd go with Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp. And I'd have the team managed by George Graham. Now, the subs bench, goalkeepers will be Pat Jennings and Ron Lukic. Defenders, Martin Keown, Lee Dixon, Nigel Winterburn, Willie Young and Steve Bold. Midfielders, Robert Perez, Cesc Fabregas, Freddie Ljungberg, Vladimir Petrovic, Brian Talbot, George Armstrong, Alan Ball, Michael Thomas and Paul Davis. And then forwards, Alan Smith, Paul Merson, Charlie Nicholas, Ian Wright, Malcolm McDonald, Brian Marwood, Mark Overmars, Niall Quinn and Martin Hayes. Now, my greatest all-time world 11, in goal I'd have Peter Shilton, centre-back. Now, in order for the players to get into my all-time world 11, I'd have to have seen them in the flesh. That's why some of the players there's certain players that aren't in this, like Gordon Banks or Lev Yashin, who probably would have made it into the team, to be fair. But because I never saw them, I'm not going to pick them. Peter Shilton, centre-back pairing of Tony Adams and Alan Hansen. Roberto Carlos at left-back. Danny McGrain at right-back. Michel Platini and Marco Tardelli in the centre of midfield. John Barnes on the left-hand side of midfield. Luis Figo on the right hand of midfield. And then up front, I'd have Diego Maradona and Marco van Basten. So, what do I think was Arsenal's greatest ever team? Well, I'd have to say the 1991 team. That team, it could go anywhere in the world and win 1-0. It was superb. And they were in a hair's breadth of having an invincible season in 1991. They only lost one game all season, which was against Chelsea, an away game where like 3/4 of the defence were out injured. So they had to play a makeshift defence and they lost the game by 2-1. The greatest performance I've ever seen from an Arsenal team was in 1989 when they went to Anfield and won by 2-0 to win the league title. At that time, Liverpool were by far and away the greatest team in Europe, in my opinion. And to go there and win 2-0 was just unheard of. It just didn't happen. So the fact they were able to pull it off was incredible. So who was my favourite player in that 1991 team? Without any shadow of a doubt, Rocky Rocastle. He was an absolute hero and he cemented his position as one of my greatest ever favourite players. In 1987, in the League Cup semi-final replay at White Hart Lane, when he scored the winner deep into injury time to take us to the final. What was my favourite away ground while watching Arsenal? Probably White Hart Lane, mostly because of the atmosphere. Did I go to away games on a regular basis? Not really, not until my early 20s. So, but yeah, like I'll talk to you about that when I do the next part of this thing. So yeah, so that's it really. Did I ever stop going to watch Arsenal? I did actually. 1991, around about 1990, 1991, I stopped going after they won the title, because mostly 95% of it was because of the football violence. I got sick and tired of this impending feeling that something was going to kick off every single time you went to a match, and being treated like a hooligan, like nearly being bloody eaten everywhere you went by a police dog, or having to be like kept in after matches and being searched all the time, and being, you know, having an assumption that you were a hooligan when you hadn't even done anything wrong. I hated it. And so in the end, I just got fed up with it. So I'm not doing it anymore. It's just ridiculous. So, but I know that the police didn't have any choice. They couldn't do anything else other than do what they did. They had to assume that everyone was a potential football hooligan. So, but because the football violence as well, it was really annoying and frustrating. Good mate of mine, Chopper, the fellow I told you about who went with us, me and Mick, to the European Championships, poor lad, he was stood in the clock end at one North London derby. I was in the North Bank. We went to the game together, said our goodbyes for the game. He went one end, I went the other. He got trampled on in the clock end. He was sitting there reading his programme, and these fucking idiot Arsenal supporters broke into the clock end and started swinging punches, and there was a big surge of Tottenham fans across the clock end. And Chopper was just sitting on the terrace reading his programme, and the next thing you know, he got trampled on by people running across the terrace. I remember once I took my mate Steve to a game in the North London derby. Steve will remember this. We were sitting there. He was sitting down on the terrace reading the programme, and we were talking about violence, football violence, and he said to me before the game, "Do you think there's any chance there could be any trouble tonight?" And I said, "I have to be honest, mate, there probably is a good chance because of what I'd seen in previous years." And within a couple of minutes of being inside the ground, there was a massive surge at the clock end. Again, there was a load of fighting in the clock end between Arsenal and Spurs fans. And I nudged him and said, "Steve, I think you better stand up and watch this." So he stood up and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Now, I remember another occasion, the ICF, the famous hooligan firm from West Ham, they came into the North Bank, and this fella who was from the ICF, really, really lovely fella. They came in because they were trying to recruit people to help them fight Millwall. And he was standing there and watching the game with me and my mates, and he started chatting to us, and then he told us why he was there and what he was trying to do. And I said, "Look, mate, to be honest with you, I'm not really into all that. So thanks for asking, but no thanks," sort of thing. Then Millwall, when they played Arsenal in the FA Cup, I remember in the build-up to the game, there was all this talk about how Millwall were going to try and take clock from the clock end of the ground back down to the Old Kent Road. And when the game kicked off, like it was like a red flag to a ball. They just kicked all around the ground. There was fighting left, right, and centre. And the police really struggled to keep control of the situation. I got fed up with it and went home just before half time. I thought, well, I've come here to watch a football game and I can't even concentrate on it because of all this violence. Arsenal went on to win the game 2-0, but it's just ridiculous, really. So, yeah, that was that. So I stopped going and I went with Mick and we went and watched Maidstone United for a while. So yeah, that's what happened, really. I hope you enjoyed that. Oh yeah, the other thing I did forget to mention is my greatest ever World 11. I'd have Jock Stein managing it. So I think he's the greatest manager ever. So there you go. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video and you found it interesting. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. Please remember to hit the like button and share the video with anyone that you think might be interested. So yeah, I hope you found it good. Okay, everyone. So that's the end of the first episode of the Memories of the Football Terrace podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it and it's whetted your appetite for the next episode. The next episode I'm going to bring out next Saturday. So that'll be a week's time. I will be doing it on a weekly basis for the time being, just till I get a few things sorted out here at home. Once that happens, I'm going to try and go back to releasing stuff every few days like I was doing before. Once midweek, once on the Saturday. But at the moment, until I get these things sorted out, it's going to be on the Saturday. Anyway, so yeah, like I say, I hope you enjoyed it and you found it interesting. If any of you would like to come on and talk to me about your experiences of being a football fan, I'll be more than happy to do that. Just drop me a line at the Warren's Team Talk email address, which is, it's on the YouTube channel. On the About section, there's an email address there you can contact me on. Or the email address is, I believe, Warren's Team Talk @outlook.com. So that's Warren's Team Talk @outlook.com. If you fancy and spending a bit of time talking to me about your experiences of watching football, that'd be amazing. I always love to hear people's stories. Anyway, so that's it for today. I hope, like I say, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope, and like I said at the beginning, I hope you're all well. Please remember to like, to share, and to subscribe to my channel and pass it around for other people to watch it. That will be fantastic. So anyway, yeah, thanks for coming by and watching it, and I'll look forward to seeing you the next time. Remember, as I always say, make sure you spread some love and happiness and joy around the world, and take care of each other. Make sure that, you know, that if you need support, that you go and get it. Don't just hide away and don't let people know that you're not doing well. That's not the best thing to do by any stretch of the imagination. Anyway, take care, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye.